Jinwoo Park stood on the bridge of the starship Terra's Voice, watching the stars streak past in brilliant lines of light. His hands were steady as he held the golden tablet that had changed everything for humanity. The message on it was simple, written in perfect Earth languages by beings who lived among distant stars. The Galactic Council invites humanity to present themselves for membership consideration. That invitation had arrived 6 months ago. Now, after 200 years of silence following humanity's first contact with aliens, they were finally being acknowledged. Jinwoo adjusted his dark blue diplomatic uniform and looked at the woman beside him. "Captain Kim, how long until we reach the council station?" he asked. Minji Kim checked her display screen. Her military uniform was crisp and clean, but Jinwoo noticed her hand never strayed far from her sidearm. 18 hours, Ambassador. The crew is ready for whatever we might face." Behind them, Do-Yun Lee worked quietly at his science station. His fingers moved quickly across holographic displays showing alien technology readings. Charts and graphs filled his screens, all trying to make sense of the advanced civilizations humanity was about to meet. "The readings are incredible," Do-Yun said without looking up. "Their energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. Some of these ships appear to be powered by controlled stellar fusion. Others seem to be using technologies that bend space itself." Jinwoo nodded. He had read every report about the galaxy's major powers. The Vorthak Empire controlled over 3,000 star systems with their massive military fleets. They looked like giant lizards and believed that strength made them superior to all other life forms. The Celestial Federation was made up of beings of pure energy who claimed to be older than most stars. The Zephyrian Collective was a hive mind of insect-like creatures who thought and acted as one. All of them had been spacefaring for thousands of years, while humans had only left Earth's solar system 2 centuries ago. All of them had technologies that seemed like magic to human scientists. All of them would be judging whether humanity deserved a place among the stars. "Ambassador," Minji said, her voice careful, "what exactly are we walking into? Our intelligence reports suggest the Council doesn't think very highly of newcomer species." Jinwoo looked out at the stars again. He had studied every piece of information. Earth's long-range sensors had gathered about galactic politics. The picture was not encouraging. New species were typically given what the Council called protectorate status. This meant they had to give up most of their resources and freedom in exchange for protection from hostile forces. "They see us as children," Jinwoo said quietly. "Dangerous children who barely survived our own nuclear age and now want to play with the adults. They expect us to be grateful for whatever scraps they offer." "And are we going to be grateful?" Minji asked. Jinwoo smiled, but there was something sharp in his expression. "That depends on what they offer." The journey continued in relative quiet. The crew of Terra's Voice went about their duties with professional efficiency. They were the best humanity had to offer, chosen from across Earth's United Nations. Every person on board knew they represented not just their own countries, but their entire species. As they drew closer to their destination, the alien ships became visible on their screens. Massive vessels that dwarfed human starships floated in perfect formations around a space station the size of a small moon. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, with rotating sections and gleaming towers that caught the light of nearby stars. "My God," whispered Do-Yun, staring at his readings. "That station is over 500 kilometers in diameter. The energy required to maintain its systems would power Earth for a century." "How many ships are out there?" Minji asked. "I count over 2,000 vessels from at least 15 different species," her tactical officer reported. "Some of them are larger than our biggest cities." Jinwoo felt a moment of doubt. How could humanity stand among beings capable of such wonders? Earth's most advanced starships looked like toys compared to what surrounded them. Their weapons were primitive chemical and nuclear devices compared to the energy weapons that could destroy planets. But then he remembered why he had been chosen for this mission. He was not just a diplomat. He had spent 20 years studying alien cultures and psychology. He understood that power came in many forms, and raw technology was just one of them. "Ambassador Park," came a voice through the ship's communication system. The translation program worked instantly, converting alien sounds into perfect English. "This is Traffic Controller Nexus 7. You are cleared to dock at Bay 47. Please maintain current speed and follow the guidance beacons." "Understood, Nexus 7, Jinwoo replied. "Terra's voice is following your instructions." As their ship moved toward the docking bay, Jinwoo watched the massive alien vessels around them. Some were sleek and beautiful, looking more like works of art than machines of war. Others were brutal and angular, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. A few seemed to be made of pure energy, shifting and changing shape as they moved. "The welcoming committee is already waiting for us," Minji observed, looking at her tactical display. 3 Vorthak heavy cruisers, 2 celestial light vessels, and something I don't recognize. "They want to make sure we understand our place in the hierarchy," Jinwoo said. "Let them. It will make what comes next more interesting." The docking procedure went smoothly. Terra's voice settled into its assigned bay with mechanical precision. Through the viewing ports, they could see aliens of various species moving about the station. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others floated through the air, and still others moved in ways that defied easy description. "Final equipment check," Jinwoo announced. "We go aboard this station as representatives of 4 billion humans. Every word we speak, every action we take, will determine humanity's future among the stars." Do-hyun closed his science displays and picked up a small device that looked like an advanced tablet. "All our presentation materials are loaded and ready, Ambassador, though I suspect they won't be impressed by fusion reactors and chemical rockets." "Maybe not," Jinwoo said, adjusting his uniform one last time. "But they might be impressed by what those technologies represent." Minji checked her sidearm and made sure her military decorations were straight. "The crew will remain on standby. If this goes badly, it won't," Jinwoo said with confidence he didn't entirely feel. "One way or another, we're going to change how the galaxy sees humanity." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay a corridor filled with beings from across the galaxy, all of them turning to stare at the newcomers from Earth. Some expressions seemed curious, others bored, and more than a few appeared openly hostile. Jinwoo Park took his first step onto an alien space station, carrying the hopes and dreams of his entire species. He had no way of knowing that within a few short days, the galaxy itself would be forever changed by what humanity was about to reveal. The council chamber was vast beyond human imagination. Jinwoo Park walked across the polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the enormous space. Above him, holographic displays showed star maps and data streams from across the galaxy. Around him, beings that had ruled the stars for millennia sat in judgment. Minji Kim walked slightly behind and to his left, her military training evident in every step. Her eyes constantly scanned the chamber, noting exits and potential threats. Do-hyun Lee followed with their presentation materials, his scientific mind cataloging every piece of alien technology he could see. At the center of the chamber stood 12 raised platforms, each occupied by a representative of the galaxy's major powers. The largest platform held Counselor Vexathera of the Vorthak Empire. The reptilian being was nearly 3 meters tall, covered in dark green scales that seemed to absorb light. When he spoke, his voice was deep and threatening. "So these are the humans," Vexathera said, his words dripping with contempt. "The species that nearly destroyed their own planet with primitive nuclear weapons. How quaint." Laughter rippled through the chamber, not just from the Vorthak, but from dozens of other species that filled the viewing areas. To Jinwoo's right, A group of blue-skinned aliens pointed at the human delegation and whispered among themselves. Their expressions made it clear they found something amusing about the newcomers. "Counselor Vexithara speaks truly," came another voice. This one belonged to Luminos, a representative of the Celestial Federation. The being appeared to be made of pure golden light, constantly shifting and changing shape. "We have observed your species for 2 centuries. Your technology is barely sufficient for basic space travel." "Fusion drives," snorted a third counselor, this one from the Mechanoid Syndicate. "We abandoned such crude propulsion methods over 4,000 years ago. What could such a primitive species possibly offer the Council?" Jinwoo remained calm, though he could feel anger building in his companions. Minji's hand had moved closer to her weapon, and Do-hyun's jaw was set in a hard line. But this was exactly what he had expected. The galaxy's powers thrived on hierarchy and dominance. They needed to establish that humans were inferior before they could begin negotiations. "Honored counselors," Jinwoo said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We are grateful for this opportunity to present humanity's case for membership in the Galactic Council." "Membership?" Vexthara's laughter was like rocks grinding together. "Ambitious little creatures, aren't you? Species such as yours don't receive membership. You receive protection." "The Vorthak counselor is correct," said Thaisara from the Harmony Collective, her voice gentler but no less condescending. "New species are granted protectorate status. It is for your own good. The galaxy is dangerous for those who cannot defend themselves." "And what would this protectorate status require?" Jinwoo asked, though he already knew the answer. "Simple. Terms," Luminos replied, his light form pulsing brighter. "You surrender 60% of your world's resources to the Council for proper distribution. You accept Council oversight of your military development. You submit to guidance from more experienced species in matters of governance and technology. In return," Vexithara added with what might have been a smile on his reptilian features, "we protect you from the many threats that lurk in the dark spaces between stars. It is a generous offer." Around the chamber, other aliens nodded in agreement. Some looked bored, as if they had seen this same scene played out dozens of times before. Others seemed eager to see how the humans would react to such overwhelming superiority. "How generous indeed," Jinwoo said carefully. "And if we were to refuse this offer?" The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Vexthara leaned forward on his platform, his yellow eyes fixed on the human ambassador. "Refusal is not advised," the Vorthak counselor said. "Species that refuse council protection often find the galaxy to be a very dangerous place. Pirates, slavers, resource thieves, so many unfortunate accidents can befall unprotected worlds." "Of course," Luminos added, "the Council cannot be held responsible for tragedies that befall those who reject our guidance." Do-hyun stepped forward slightly, his scientific curiosity overriding his diplomatic restraint. "Counselors, might we ask about the specific technologies and defenses that make the Council's protection so necessary?" Several aliens in the viewing areas laughed at this question. A small creature with multiple arms gestured dismissively at the humans. "The child wishes to understand weapons of war," it chittered. "Perhaps we should demonstrate the power of a single council vessel against their entire fleet." "Their entire fleet consists of 12 primitive vessels," observed another alien. "My personal transport ship could disable them all without difficulty." Minji took a half-step forward, her military instincts flaring at the casual dismissal of human capabilities. Jinwoo caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Not yet. We have observed your military capabilities," Vexithara continued. "Kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, electromagnetic pulse devices, technologies we used when we were barely civilized ourselves. Against the weapons of modern galactic powers, your ships would last perhaps 30 seconds in battle." "Less," corrected a counselor from the Stellar Dominion. Our reality disruptors would simply erase them from existence. No explosion, no debris. They would simply not be. This is why the Council's protection is so valuable, Thaisara said in her gentle voice. Without our guidance, humanity would be destroyed within a decade of expanding beyond your solar system. Jinwoo looked around the chamber, taking in the contemptuous expressions, the bored indifference, the casual dismissal of human worth. Every species present seemed convinced that humanity was nothing more than another primitive race to be absorbed into the galactic hierarchy. Counselors, he said finally, this is indeed a momentous decision for humanity. Might we be permitted 24 hours to consider your generous offer? The request provoked another wave of laughter throughout the chamber. Vexithara's amusement seemed particularly pronounced. 24 hours? The Vorthak counselor rumbled. To consider an offer of survival? Very well. Though I cannot imagine what there is to discuss. The alternatives to council protection are not pleasant. We shall return with our answer tomorrow, Jinwoo said, bowing respectfully to the assembled counselors. As the human delegation turned to leave, conversations broke out across the chamber. Most of the aliens seemed to find the humans' request for time amusing. A few appeared irritated that such an obvious decision required any consideration at all. 24 hours, Do-Yun muttered as they walked toward the exit. As if there's actually a choice to make. There's always a choice, Minji said quietly, her hand still close to her weapon. They just don't know what ours is going to be. Jinwoo said nothing as they left the chamber, but his mind was already working through the next phase of their plan. The galaxy's powers had revealed exactly what he had hoped they would. Their arrogance, their casual cruelty, and their absolute certainty that humanity posed no threat to their established order. Tomorrow, they would learn how wrong they were about that last point. The moment the door to their quarters sealed shut, Jinwoo Park's entire demeanor changed. The polite, somewhat overwhelmed ambassador disappeared, replaced by a man with sharp eyes and a dangerous smile. He loosened his diplomatic collar and looked at his companions. Well, that went exactly as expected, he said, his voice now carrying an edge that hadn't been there in the council chamber. Minji Kim removed her formal military jacket and revealed the tactical vest underneath. Her movements were fluid and precise as she began checking hidden equipment. They're even more arrogant than our intelligence reports suggested. Did you see how they dismissed our entire fleet as if it were a collection of toys? Do-Hyun Lee had already activated several devices that hadn't been visible during the formal presentation. Holographic displays filled the air around him, showing detailed scans of the Council Station's systems. I managed to map 70% of their network architecture during the meeting. Their security is impressive, but it's designed to stop energy-based attacks and brute force intrusions. They've never encountered anything like our approach. Show me, Jinwoo said, moving to stand beside the scientist. The displays shifted, revealing layer upon layer of alien computer systems. They use quantum encryption and bio-neural networks, Do-Hyun explained. Very advanced, but they follow predictable patterns. More importantly, they're all connected. Every system talks to every other system through a central hub. A single point of failure, Minji observed with satisfaction. For all their technology, they still make the same basic strategic errors. Jinwoo activated a communication device that looked like a simple wrist accessory. The holographic image of President Soo-Young Choi appeared above the device, her expression serious and focused. Ambassador Park, she said without preamble. We've been monitoring your mission through the deep space relays. How did the Council react to your presentation? Exactly as predicted, Madam President. They offered protectorate status with the standard terms, 60% resource extraction, military oversight, and what amounts to permanent colonial subjugation. Soo-Young's expression didn't change, but her eyes grew colder. And their attitude toward human capabilities? Complete dismissal, Minji interjected. They view our entire military as a minor inconvenience. One counselor suggested his personal transport could defeat our entire fleet. Perfect, said another voice as Fleet Admiral Kyungmin Han stepped into the communication range. Phase 2 is ready to deploy on your signal. Are you certain you want to proceed with the full demonstration? Jinwoo looked at his companions, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had brought them this far. Admiral, humanity has spent 200 years preparing for this moment. We knew the galaxy would never respect weakness or accept us as equals based on goodwill alone. It's time to show them what human ingenuity really means. The connection shifted, and Chief Engineer Yoonji Song appeared on the display. Behind her, Jinwoo could see the massive construction bays of Luna Station, where humanity's real fleet was being prepared. The modifications are complete, Ambassador, Yoonji reported. Every ship in the task force has been equipped with the new systems. The Vorthak will be particularly surprised when they discover what our primitive fusion drives can actually do. And our diplomatic counterproposal? Jinwoo asked. President Soo-young nodded grimly. Full membership with equal voting rights, or we leave peacefully and handle galactic relations on our own terms. No protectorate status, no resource tribute, no military oversight. They'll refuse, Do-hyun said. Their entire power structure is built on hierarchy and dominance. Accepting humans as equals would threaten their control over dozens of other species. Then they'll learn what happens when humans are forced to make their own way in the galaxy, Minji said, checking her weapons one final time. The communication ended, leaving the three humans alone in their quarters. Around them, the council station hummed with the activity of dozens of alien species, all of them convinced that humanity would submit to galactic authority within hours. Are you having second thoughts? Jinwoo asked his companions. Do-hyun looked up from his scanning equipment. About challenging 12 ancient civilizations with technologies that seem like magic? About potentially starting a war that could destroy our entire species? He paused, then smiled. No. I'm excited to see their faces when they realize what we've actually accomplished. The galaxy has been stable for too long, Minji added. Stable means stagnant. These civilizations haven't faced a real challenge in millennia. They've forgotten what innovation looks like when it's driven by necessity rather than academic curiosity. Jinwoo moved to the quarter's single window, looking out at the alien vessels surrounding the station. 200 years ago, when we first encountered their exploration probes, humanity made a choice. We could reveal ourselves immediately and risk becoming another conquered species, or we could stay hidden and learn everything we could about galactic civilization. Best decision our species ever made, Do-hyun said. While they dismissed us as primitive, we were studying their technologies, their tactics, their weaknesses. They see our fusion drives and chemical weapons, but they don't understand the principles behind them. They don't understand us, Minji corrected. Every species they've encountered follows predictable patterns. They develop technology in a certain order. They organize their societies in familiar ways. They fight wars according to established rules. But humans are different, Jinwoo finished. We adapt. We improvise. We find solutions that shouldn't work but do, and most importantly, we never give up. He turned from the window to face his companions. Tomorrow, we return to that chamber and present our counter-proposal. They'll refuse, probably with threats of immediate violence. Counselor Vexithara seems particularly eager to demonstrate Vorthak superiority. And then, Do-hyun asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we show them what humans do when someone threatens our freedom, Jinwoo said. We show them why Earth survived its own nuclear age, why we united our entire planet for the first time in human history, and why we spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. The three humans spent the next several hours reviewing their plans, checking their equipment, and preparing for what would either be humanity's greatest diplomatic triumph or the beginning of the most dangerous war in galactic history. Outside, Their quarters, alien security forces maintained their patrols, confident that the primitive humans were safely contained and would soon submit to council authority. None of them noticed the subtle energy signatures that Do Yun's equipment was broadcasting, or the way those signatures were slowly mapping every critical system on the station. Tomorrow would bring changes that would reshape the galaxy forever. The question was whether those changes would come through negotiation, or through the kind of conflict that humanity had spent its entire existence learning to wage. The council chamber looked exactly the same as it had the day before, but the atmosphere was different. Where yesterday there had been amusement and condescension, today there was impatience and irritation. The galaxy's rulers were not accustomed to waiting for answers from primitive species. Jinwoo Park walked across the polished floor with the same measured pace as before, but those who knew him could see the subtle differences. His shoulders were straighter, his expression more focused, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there during his first appearance. Counselor Vexathara was the first to speak, his reptilian voice echoing through the vast chamber. "So, humans, have you considered our generous offer? Are you prepared to accept council protection?" "We have indeed considered your proposal very carefully, Counselor," Jinwoo replied. "However, I'm afraid we must respectfully decline." A wave of shocked silence swept through the chamber. In the viewing areas, aliens who had been chattering among themselves fell quiet. Even some of the counselors seemed surprised by the humans' boldness. Decline? Luminos of the Celestial Federation pulsed brighter, his energy form shifting rapidly. "You decline the protection of the Galactic Council. Do you understand what you are saying?" "We understand perfectly," Jinwoo said calmly. "Instead, we would like to present a counter-proposal. Humanity requests full membership in the Galactic Council, with equal voting rights and equal representation." The silence that followed this statement was even more profound than the first. Then Vexathara began to laugh, a sound like grinding stone that filled the entire chamber. "Full membership?" the Vorthak counselor roared. "Equal rights? You jest, surely. Species with 12 primitive vessels do not demand equality with civilizations that command thousands of star systems. Your counterproposal is rejected," said Thisara of the Harmony Collective, though her gentle tone made the rejection no less final. "We strongly advise you to reconsider the protectorate arrangement. It is the only path that ensures your survival." "And if we refuse both options?" Jinwoo asked. Vexathara's yellow eyes fixed on the human ambassador with predatory focus. "Then you will discover why the Vorthak Empire has maintained order in this sector for 3,000 years. Your pathetic fleet will be destroyed. Your world will be occupied, and your people will serve as examples to other species who might consider defying council authority." "Unfortunate," Jinwoo said, nodding to Do-hyun. "We had hoped this could be resolved peacefully." Do-hyun Lee stepped forward and activated what appeared to be a simple communication device, no larger than a human smartphone. He pressed a single control, and suddenly every electronic display in the council chamber began to flicker. The change was subtle at first. Status indicators blinked off and on. Holographic displays wavered slightly, but within seconds, the effects became more pronounced. Environmental controls began cycling randomly. Lighting systems pulsed in strange patterns. Communication networks crackled with interference. "What are you doing?" Luminos demanded, his energy form flaring brightly. "Demonstrating a principle," Do-hyun replied calmly, holding up the small device. "This contains a human-designed interface protocol. Right now, it has connected to and is communicating with your station's central network." Panic began to spread through the chamber as more systems malfunctioned. Gravity generators fluctuated, causing several floating species to bob uncontrollably. Security barriers activated and deactivated in random sequences. Even the counselors' platforms began to shake as their stabilization systems were affected. "Impossible," breathed a mechanoid syndicate representative. Our networks are quantum encrypted with bio-neural security layers. No primitive technology could penetrate our defenses. You're correct, Do-hyun agreed. No primitive technology could. But this isn't primitive technology. This is human technology, which operates on completely different principles than anything your civilizations have encountered. Vexthara rose from his platform, his massive form towering over the chamber. Cease this demonstration immediately, or face immediate military action. Actually, Minji Kim said, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber, you might want to check your tactical displays before making threats. Several counselors activated their personal defense screens, revealing holographic displays of the space around the council station. What they saw caused even more consternation than the system malfunctions. The empty space around the station was no longer empty. Dozens of human vessels had appeared as if from nowhere, their sleek forms surrounding the massive alien facility. They were clearly visible now, but every sensor reading showed they had been completely undetectable just moments before. Stealth technology, gasped Thisara. But our sensors can detect anything with mass or energy signature. How did you hide entire fleets from our detection systems? We didn't hide them, Minji explained. We made them irrelevant to your detection methods. Your sensors look for energy emissions and gravitational disturbances. Our ships use quantum phase, cloaking that shifts them slightly out of normal space-time. They're in the same location, but from your perspective, they simply don't exist. Admiral Sunwoo Kang's voice suddenly filled the chamber, broadcast through the station's own communication system. Council Station Control, this is Admiral Kang of the Earth Defense Force. Please be advised that this station is now surrounded by human military vessels. We have no hostile intent, but we are prepared to defend our diplomatic mission if necessary. You dare threaten the Council itself? Vexthara snarled, his claws extending as his combat instincts activated. We're not threatening anyone, Jinwoo said reasonably. We're simply demonstrating that humanity is not as helpless as you assumed. The question now is whether you're willing to reconsider our request for equal membership. Never, Luminos flared, his light form pulsing with anger. The Council does not negotiate with primitive species who resort to deception and intimidation. Deception? Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. We never lied about our capabilities. You simply assumed that fusion drives and chemical weapons represented the limits of human technology. We allowed you to maintain that assumption because it served our purposes. The truth of this statement hung in the air like a challenge. Every species in the chamber had dismissed humanity based on the most basic observations, never bothering to look deeper or ask more probing questions. What else are you hiding? Asked Thisara, her voice now carrying a note of genuine concern rather than condescension. That depends, Jinwoo replied. Are you interested in negotiating? Or shall we simply leave and handle our galactic relations independently? Vexthara's response was swift and predictable. You will not leave this station alive. Vorthak battle fleets are already moving to intercept your vessels. In 1 hour, your stealth technology will be tested against the finest military force in the galaxy. Admiral Kang, Minji said, speaking to the open communication channel, it appears the Vorthak Empire wishes to provide a more comprehensive demonstration of human capabilities. Understood, Captain Kim. All units are prepared for combat protocol. 7. Shall I signal the fleet to begin Phase 2 of the demonstration? Jinwoo looked around the chamber one final time, taking in the mixture of fear, anger, and stubborn pride on the faces of the galaxy's rulers. Admiral, please proceed. Let's show them what humans learned during our 2 centuries of preparation. As alarms began to sound throughout the council station, the aliens present realized they were about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had been dismissed as primitive was about to challenge the established order with technologies and tactics that none of them understood. The demonstration was just beginning. The Vorthak battle fleet arrived with all the ceremony and intimidation that 3,000 years of military dominance could provide. Massive dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charging for battle. Each ship was the size of a human city, bristling with energy cannons that could crack planets. Admiral Vorthak, Supreme Commander Gexenol watched the tactical displays from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. The human vessels appeared on his screens like small insects surrounding a feast. Primitive fusion drives, basic hull construction, and weapons that fired solid projectiles instead of pure energy. "This will be over quickly," he rumbled to his tactical officer. "Target their command ship first. Make their destruction visible to all species watching. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Council." But as his fleet moved into attack formation, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't try to run. They didn't power up defensive shields or charge their weapons for a desperate last stand. Instead, they began to move in patterns that made no tactical sense. Some ships flew directly toward the much larger Vorthak vessels, as if attempting suicide runs. Others spread out in seemingly random directions, presenting perfect targets for the Empire's gunners. A few simply stopped moving entirely, floating dead in space like abandoned hulks. "Are they surrendering?" asked the tactical officer, confused by the humans' behavior. "It matters not," Gexenol declared. "Destroy them all." The Vorthak fleet opened, fire with devastating precision. Beams of concentrated energy that could melt asteroids struck the human vessels directly. But instead of the expected explosions and debris clouds, something else happened. The human ships absorbed the energy strikes and kept moving. Their hulls glowed cherry red from the heat, but they didn't break apart. Sections that should have been completely destroyed simply rearranged themselves, flowing like liquid metal to seal breaches and redirect power systems. "Impossible," breathed the tactical officer. "Our weapons are striking their hulls directly. They should be destroyed." On the council station, Do-Yun Lee watched the battle unfold on his monitoring devices, while Counselor Vexithara demanded explanations. "What kind of material are your ships constructed from?" the reptilian counselor snarled. "Smart matter," Do-Yun replied calmly. "Programmable substances that can shift their molecular structure in response to damage. When you hit our ships with energy weapons, the hull material converts that energy into structural repairs and power for our systems." "But the heat buildup should destroy your crews," protested Thisara. "It would if we had traditional crews," Minji Kim said, stepping forward. "But humans learned long ago that the most dangerous environment for space combat is inside the spacecraft. Our ships are controlled remotely by pilots who are safely aboard our command vessels. In space, the battle was becoming increasingly one-sided, but not in the way anyone had expected. The human ships that had seemed to be making suicide runs were now revealed to be performing precision strikes. As they flew past the massive Vorthak dreadnoughts, they released swarms of tiny devices that attached to the alien hulls like metal. "Insects! What are those things?" Gexenol demanded as his sensors detected thousands of small objects crawling across his ship's surfaces. His answer came when his flagship's main weapon systems suddenly shut down. Across the fleet, other commanders reported similar problems. Navigation systems were malfunctioning, communication arrays were failing, life support systems were cycling randomly. Captain Hyejin Yu's voice reached the Vorthak command frequency, somehow bypassing all their security protocols. "Admiral Gexenol, this is Captain Yu of the Earth Defense Force. Your vessels are now under the control of human cyber warfare systems. Please power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted back to your home territory." "We do not surrender." "To primitives!" Gexenol roared. But even as he spoke, his ship's systems were being systematically shut down by the tiny devices that had attached to his hull. "This isn't a surrender," Hyejin replied. "This is a demonstration. Your ships and crews are unharmed, but they are no longer under your command. We could have destroyed your entire fleet within the first 30 seconds of combat. Instead, we chose to disable you without casualties." The truth of this statement was becoming clear throughout the Vorthak formation. Their mighty dreadnoughts were now helpless. Their weapons offline, their engines controlled by human technology they couldn't understand or counter. How? Gexnall asked, his voice hollow with shock. Swarm robotics combined with adaptive programming? Do-hyun explained to the aliens watching from the council chamber. Each of those devices you see on your hulls contains more processing power than your entire fleet combined. They're designed to analyze, understand, and take control of any technology they encounter. But such devices would require artificial intelligence far beyond anything we've achieved, said Luminos, his energy form flickering with what might have been fear. Correct, Minji agreed. Human artificial intelligence development took a very different path than galactic standard. While your civilizations focused on creating AI that thinks like your organic minds, we created AI that thinks like humans. The difference is significant. In space, more human vessels were decloaking around the council station. Not just the small fleet that had been visible before, but hundreds of ships of various sizes and configurations. Some were clearly warships, but others appeared to be science vessels, supply ships, and even what looked like mobile construction facilities. You brought an entire task force, Vexathara said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. We brought everything we needed to establish a permanent human presence in galactic space, Jinwoo corrected. This was never just a diplomatic mission. This was our species' announcement that we're ready to take our place among the stars, with or without council approval. Admiral Sun Woo Kang's image appeared on the chamber's main display, his expression calm and professional. Counselors, I have the honor to report that the Vorthak attack fleet has been neutralized without casualties. Their vessels are being escorted to the edge of council space, where they will be released unharmed. This is an act of war against the entire council, Luminos declared, his form pulsing with agitation. No, Jinwoo said firmly. This is an act of self-defense against a military attack launched without provocation. We have harmed no one, destroyed no property, and taken no prisoners. We have simply demonstrated that humanity is capable of defending itself against any threat the galaxy might present. What do you want? Asked Thesaara, her voice now carrying a note of genuine respect rather than condescension. The same thing we wanted yesterday, Jinwoo replied. Full membership in the Galactic Council with equal rights and equal representation. The only difference is that now you know we don't need your protection. We can provide our own. The chamber fell silent as the implications of what they had witnessed began to sink in. A species they had dismissed as primitive had just demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything the established powers possessed. More importantly, they had done so with restraint and precision that suggested far greater depths of ability than what they had revealed. The age of easy galactic dominance was over. Humanity had arrived, and the rules of the game had just changed forever. The silence in the council chamber stretched for long minutes as the galaxy's most powerful beings tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The easy dismissal of humanity was no longer possible, but accepting them as equals would require, admitting that their entire understanding of galactic hierarchy was flawed. It was Do-hyun Lee who broke the silence, activating another device that projected new holographic displays throughout the chamber. These weren't technical readouts or star charts. They were surveillance recordings, communication intercepts, and data analysis reports that made several counselors shift uncomfortably on their platforms. While you were all focused on our primitive fusion drives, Do-hyun said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty, we were studying you, not just your technologies or military capabilities, but your societies, your politics, and your secrets. The first display showed shipping records from the Outer Rim territories. Trade. Routes that should have been carrying agricultural products were instead moving military hardware to unknown destinations. Financial records revealed massive transfers of wealth that had no legitimate explanation. "The Shadow Syndicate," Jinwoo announced, his words causing several counselors to freeze in obvious recognition. "A criminal organization that has been operating within Council space for over 2,000 years. They control illegal mining operations, slave trafficking networks, and weapons smuggling to hostile species outside the galaxy." "This is preposterous!" Vexathara snarled, but his yellow eyes were fixed on the displays with obvious concern. "The Council maintains perfect order throughout civilized space." "Does it?" Minji Kim asked, activating controls that changed the displays. "These are sensor readings from the Kepler Dark Zone, taken 6 months ago by human deep space monitoring stations." What appeared on the holographic displays made even the energy being luminous flicker with what could only be described as shock. Massive geometric shapes hung in the void between galaxies, each one larger than most star systems. They were clearly artificial, and they were moving toward the galactic rim at speeds that defied conventional physics. "The Void Harbingers," Do-hyun said quietly. "An extragalactic species that consumes entire civilizations. They've been approaching our galaxy for over 300 years, but somehow the Council's long-range sensors have never detected them." "Impossible," declared Thaisara. "Our monitoring systems cover every approach to the galaxy. Nothing of that size could avoid detection." Chief Intelligence Officer Yuna Lim's image appeared beside Admiral Kang's, her expression grim. "Counselors, we have evidence that someone has been systematically sabotaging your early warning networks. The Void Harbingers were supposed to be detected when they reached the outer monitoring stations. Instead, those stations reported equipment failures and sent false all-clear signals. But who would—" began a counselor from the Mechanoid Syndicate, then stopped as the implications became clear. "Someone who benefits from galactic chaos," Jinwoo said, his tone becoming more serious than it had been at any point during the proceedings. "Someone who has been preparing for the Harbinger's arrival by weakening the Council's ability to respond effectively." The displays changed again, showing internal Council communications that should have been completely secure. Meeting transcripts, private negotiations, and strategic planning documents filled the air around the counselors. "How did you obtain classified Council records?" Luminos demanded, his energy form flaring with outrage. "The same way we obtained everything else," Do-hyun replied. "We listened, we watched, we analyzed patterns and drew conclusions. And what we found was that one of your own member species has been systematically betraying the rest of the galaxy." All eyes turned to the platform occupied by Counselor Maltheos of the Stellar Dominion. The alien being resembled a tall, elegant, humanoid with silver skin and faceted crystal eyes, but now those eyes were fixed on the human delegation with something approaching panic. "The Stellar Dominion has been conducting secret negotiations with Shadow Syndicate leaders for over 500 years, Yuna Lim's voice continued. "They've been providing technology and intelligence in exchange for access to restricted resources and experimental subjects. More importantly," Minji added, "they've been developing weapons that use reality distortion technology. Not just the reality disruptors they mentioned earlier, but devices capable of destabilizing space-time itself. These weapons are intended for use against the Void Harbingers," Maltheos said, speaking for the first time since the humans had begun their revelations. "Everything we have done has been in preparation for the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced." "By weakening the very civilizations you claim to be protecting?" Jinwoo asked. "By ensuring that when the Harbingers arrive, the galaxy will be divided, unprepared, and unable to mount an effective defense? The current galactic order is weak," Maltheos replied, his crystalline voice growing colder. "Thousands of species all trying to maintain their individual territories and interests. When the Harbingers come, we need unity under strong leadership. The Stellar Dominion is prepared to provide that leadership." "You mean domination," Thaisara said, her gentle voice now carrying an edge of steel. You've been manipulating us all toward a crisis that would leave you as the galaxy's sole surviving power. The truth of the Stellar Dominion's plan was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. They had been working to ensure that when the extragalactic threat arrived, all other civilizations would be too damaged or disorganized to resist both the invaders and the Dominion's seizure of power. "This is why you really came," Vexithera said, looking at the human delegation with new understanding. "Not just to demand membership, but to warn us about threats we couldn't see." "Partially correct," Jinwu acknowledged. "We came because humanity is ready to take its place as a galactic civilization. But we also came because we understand what it means to face existential threats. Earth survived its nuclear age, its climate, crises, and its resource wars by learning to work together despite our differences. The galaxy needs that same unity now," Do-Yun added. "The Void Harbingers will arrive within 50 years. The Shadow Syndicate has been undermining galactic defenses for centuries, and species that should be allies have been manipulated into viewing each other as competitors rather than partners." "What are you proposing?" asked Luminos, his energy form now pulsing with what seemed to be thoughtful consideration rather than anger. "A new approach to galactic governance," Jinwu said. "Not the hierarchical system that has allowed corruption and manipulation to flourish, but a cooperative structure where each species contributes its unique strengths to the common defense. Humans bring adaptability, innovation, and strategic thinking," Minji said. "But we're not trying to replace your civilization's contributions. We want to combine them into something stronger than any single species could achieve alone." President Su-Young Choi's image appeared beside the other human officials, her expression resolute. "The Earth government is prepared to share our technologies, our tactical knowledge, and our resources with any species willing to work toward genuine galactic unity. But we will not submit to systems that treat some civilizations as superior to others." "The choice is yours, counselors," Jinwu concluded. "You can continue the old patterns that have left you vulnerable to external threats and internal corruption, or you can help us build something new, something that might actually be strong enough to survive what's coming." The chamber fell silent again as the weight of these revelations settled over the assembled aliens. Everything they thought they knew about galactic politics, about humanity, and about their own security had been fundamentally challenged in the space of a few hours. The galaxy would never be the same. The council chamber had become a place of tense, whispered conversations as species that had been allies for millennia suddenly found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew. Counselor Maltheos of the Stellar Dominion sat in rigid silence on his platform while security forces took positions around the chamber in case the situation deteriorated further. It was then that President Su-Young Choi arrived in person. The human leader entered the chamber with a dignity that commanded attention from beings who had ruled the stars for thousands of years. She walked with the confidence of someone who had united an entire planet under a single government and guided humanity through its transition to becoming a spacefaring species. Behind her came the rest of humanity's leadership. Fleet Admiral Kyung-Min Han moved with the precise bearing of someone who had never lost a strategic engagement. Dr. Nari Park, head of the Human Science Collective, carried herself with the quiet authority of a woman who had revolutionized 3 different fields of physics. Chief Engineer Yoonji Song walked with the practical confidence of someone who built impossible things and made them work. "Counselors," President Choi said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I apologize for the dramatic nature of our arrival, but circumstances required us to demonstrate humanity's capabilities before we could be heard as equals." "Your point has been made quite effectively," Thisara replied, her tone now respectful rather than condescending. "The question now is what you propose to do with those capabilities." President Choi activated a device that projected new displays throughout the chamber. These weren't surveillance reports or military schematics, but detailed technical blueprints and scientific theories that made several counselors lean forward with obvious interest. We propose to share them, she said simply. Not as overlords demanding tribute, but as partners working toward common goals. Dr. Nari Park stepped forward, her scientific enthusiasm evident as she began explaining the displays. Human research has achieved breakthroughs in 17 different fields that directly address the threats facing galactic civilization. Our quantum mechanics allows for faster-than-light communication without the signal degradation that limits current galactic networks. Our materials science has produced substances that can adapt to any environment or threat, Chief Engineer Yunji Song added. The smart matter you saw in our ship hulls can be programmed for any application. Construction, defense, resource processing, even terraforming previously uninhabitable worlds. Most importantly, Admiral Kyung-Min Han said, his military experience, evident in every word, our strategic doctrines are designed around cooperation between diverse forces rather than domination by a single power. We learned during our own wars that diversity of thought and capability is a strength, not a weakness. Vexthara, still struggling with the implications of his fleet's defeat, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Why share these advantages? Why not use them to establish your own empire? Because empires fail, President Choi replied without hesitation. Every species in this chamber rules territories that were once controlled by previous empires that thought themselves eternal. The Vorthak Empire itself is built on the ruins of at least 3 predecessor civilizations. Human history is full of the same pattern, Jinwoo added. Great powers that became too focused on maintaining control and forgot about adapting to new challenges. We learned that survival requires constant growth and change, not static dominance. The displays shifted to show detailed plans for what humans called the Terran Accords, a proposed restructuring of galactic governance that would replace the current hierarchical system with something entirely different. Instead of member species and protectorates, we propose a federation of equals, Dr. Nari Park explained. Each civilization contributes its unique strengths while maintaining full autonomy over their internal affairs. The Vorthak military expertise would be invaluable for coordinating defense against external threats, Admiral Han said, nodding respectfully to Counselor Vexthara. But that coordination would be based on tactical necessity, not political domination. Celestial energy manipulation technology could revolutionize power generation throughout the galaxy, Chief Engineer Song added, looking to Luminos. Combined with human adaptive materials, we could build infrastructure that grows and changes to meet evolving needs. The Harmony Collective's diplomatic skills would be essential for managing cooperation between so many different species. President Choi said to Thysaara, but true harmony requires genuine equality, not enforced submission. It was then that the Shadow Syndicate made their move. Alarms began blaring throughout the council station as reports flooded in of simultaneous attacks on 12 different star systems. The displays in the chamber switched to emergency broadcasts, showing fleets of unmarked vessels assaulting military installations and civilian populations across the galaxy. The Syndicate is moving to destabilize the entire region, Yuna Lim reported through the communication system. They're using the chaos of these revelations to launch coordinated strikes against key strategic targets. This is what we feared, Maltheos said, rising from his platform with what seemed like genuine concern rather than the calculated coldness he had shown before. The old order is collapsing, and criminal elements are moving to fill the power vacuum. Then we stop them, Admiral Han said simply, activating his own communication devices. All human task forces, this is Fleet Command. Implement Galactic Defense Protocol 1. Coordinate with any council forces willing to work with us. You would defend systems that aren't under human control? Vexthara asked, clearly surprised. We would defend any innocent beings threatened by criminal violence, President Choi replied. That's what the Terran Accords mean. Not just cooperation when it's convenient, but genuine mutual defense against any threat to civilized life. The key. Next several hours became a test of everything humanity had proposed about cooperative defense. Human ships coordinated with Vorthak battle fleets to repel attacks on mining colonies. Celestial energy beings worked with human engineers to restore power grids that had been sabotaged by syndicate raiders. Even species that had never communicated before found themselves sharing tactical information and resources to defend against. The coordinated assault. Captain Heejin Yu's voice reached the council chamber from the battle zone around the Kepler system. Human and Vorthak forces have successfully driven off the syndicate attack fleet. Civilian casualties are minimal thanks to rapid response coordination between our species. Similar reports came in from battle zones throughout the galaxy. Not just human victories, but joint operations that succeeded because different species brought different strengths to each engagement. "It's working," Thisara said, her voice filled with what sounded like wonder. "Cooperation between equals is more effective than any hierarchical command structure we've ever used." "This is just the beginning," President Choi replied. The Shadow Syndicate was a symptom of larger problems in galactic governance. The Void Harbingers represent a threat that will require everything our combined civilizations can muster. "But for the first time in millennia," Dr. Nari Park added, "we have a real chance of surviving and thriving through the changes that are coming." Counselor Vexithara looked around the chamber at beings who had been enemies, allies, and neutral, parties just hours before. Now they were all part of something larger than any individual empire or federation. "If we are to do this," he said slowly, "if we are to remake the galaxy's entire political structure, it must be done properly. No species can be left behind or excluded from the benefits." "Agreed," President Choi said with a smile. "That's exactly what humanity was hoping you would say." The Terran Accords were about to become reality, and the galaxy was about to discover what it meant to truly work together. 5 years after the signing of the Terran Accords, the galaxy barely resembled the rigid hierarchy that had existed when humans first walked into the council chamber. The massive council station had been rebuilt and expanded, its chambers now, designed to accommodate hundreds of species as equals rather than dozens as rulers and subjects. Ambassador Jinwoo Park stood in what was now called the Unity Chamber, watching representatives from across the galaxy work together on solutions to challenges that would have been impossible to address under the old system. The formal robes and ceremonial platforms had been replaced with practical workstations where beings could collaborate directly regardless of their physical forms. The quarterly defense reports show remarkable progress, Captain Minji Kim said, approaching with a data tablet in her hand. She now held the rank of Galactic Defense Coordinator, overseeing joint military operations that would have been unthinkable just years before. The Shadow Syndicate has been reduced to isolated cells operating in the Outer Rim territories. More importantly, added Dr. Nari Park, who had become the Director of Interspecies Scientific Cooperation, our combined research efforts have produced breakthrough technologies that no single species could have achieved alone. She gestured to one of the chamber's displays, showing a star map marked with hundreds of colored indicators. Vorthak tactical doctrine combined with human adaptive strategies has created defense networks that can respond to threats in real time. Celestial energy manipulation enhanced by human engineering has produced power systems that can support entire sectors. And the Harmony Collective's diplomatic innovations have resolved resource conflicts that have existed for centuries, Jinwoo added with satisfaction. Species that were traditional enemies are now working together on joint colonization projects. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. 3 major species had initially refused to join the new federation, preferring to maintain their independent territories. 2 of them had eventually requested membership when they saw the benefits their neighbors were enjoying. The third, a militaristic empire called the Iron Dominion, had attempted to exploit what they saw as galactic weakness by launching territorial expansion campaigns. They had learned very quickly why that was a mistake. The Iron Dominion delegation, is still waiting in Conference Room 7, Minji reported. Their surrender terms are comprehensive. As they should be, Jinwoo replied. Attacking Federation member species was an act of war against all of us. But their defeat also demonstrated something important to the rest of the galaxy. The Iron Dominion had possessed one of the most powerful military forces in known space, with weapons technology that rivaled anything the old Council had commanded. But they had been utterly defeated by the combined forces of 12 different species working in perfect coordination. Human tactical flexibility had adapted to their battle strategies within hours. Vorthak heavy assault forces had provided the muscle needed to break their defensive lines. Celestial energy beings had disrupted their power systems, while mechanoid engineering units repaired damaged Federation ships faster than the enemy could destroy them. The Harmony Collective had even managed to convince several Iron Dominion commanders to defect by demonstrating the benefits of cooperative warfare over the brutal disciplinary methods their own leadership employed. The real victory wasn't military, Dr. Nari Park observed. It was showing that our new system can defend itself without becoming the kind of oppressive hierarchy we replaced. Indeed, the Iron Dominion's captured territories were not being occupied or exploited. Instead, they were being offered the same membership terms as every other species in the Federation. Their populations were receiving humanitarian aid, their damaged infrastructure was being rebuilt with Federation resources, and their leaders were being given the opportunity to participate in governance rather than being executed or imprisoned. Speaking of which, Minji said, checking her chronometer, the Void Harbinger situation requires your attention. Admiral Han is ready to begin the next phase of the Long-Range Defense Initiative. Jinwoo nodded and activated his communication device. Admiral Kyungmin Han's image appeared, but he was no longer standing on the bridge of a human vessel. Instead, he was in the command center of the Galactic Defense Station, surrounded by officers from dozens of different species, all working together with seamless efficiency. Ambassador Park, Admiral Han said, I'm pleased to report that the Deep Space Monitoring Network is now fully operational. We have complete sensor coverage extending 50,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim. And the Void Harbingers? Jinwoo asked. Still approaching, but we now have accurate predictions of their arrival time and probable entry points, Han replied. More importantly, we have 43 years to prepare, and we're no longer preparing alone. The displays around the Unity Chamber lit up with images from across the galaxy. Shipyards where human and alien engineers worked side by side to build vessels that incorporated the best technologies from every member species. Research stations where scientists who had never even communicated before were now developing weapons, and defensive systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Training facilities where military officers from historically hostile species learned to fight as coordinated units. The first prototype hybrid vessels will be ready for testing next month, Chief Engineer Yoonji Song reported from one of the shipyards. These aren't human ships with alien components or alien ships with human modifications. They're something entirely new, designed from the beginning to maximize the strengths of our combined technologies. Population evacuation protocols have been finalized for the Outer Rim systems, added Yuna Lim from the Intelligence Coordination Center. If the Harbingers break through our initial defense lines, we can relocate over 2 billion beings to safe zones within 72 hours. But the most remarkable change wasn't in technology or military capability. It was in the beings themselves. Young, Vorthak officers now trained alongside human tacticians, learning that true strength came from adaptability rather than raw aggression. Celestial energy beings worked with solid matter species on projects that bridged the gap between their fundamentally different ways of existing. Children from dozens of species attended integrated schools where they learned not just mathematics and science, but how to think like other forms of life entirely. The cultural exchange programs are exceeding all projections, reported Thaisara, who had become the director of interspecies relations. We're seeing the emergence of genuinely hybrid cultures that combine the best aspects of their parent civilizations. Jinwoo looked around the Unity Chamber at beings who had once seen each other as competitors, threats, or subjects to be controlled. Now they were partners in the truest sense, each contributing their unique gifts to challenges that affected them all. President Choi wanted me to remind everyone about next week's commemoration ceremony, he announced. 5 years since the first Terran Accords were signed, and 43 years until we face our greatest test. We'll be ready, Admiral Han said with quiet confidence. Not because any single species is strong enough to face the Harbingers alone, but because all of us together have become something greater than the sum of our parts. As the day's sessions ended and representatives began returning to their home systems, Jinwoo remained in the Unity Chamber, watching the stars through the massive viewing ports. Somewhere out there, an implacable enemy was approaching with the power to destroy entire civilizations. But for the first time in galactic history, those civilizations were truly united in their determination to survive and thrive. The old galaxy of rigid hierarchies and competing empires was gone forever. In its place was something humanity had always known was possible but had never seen on such a scale. Genuine cooperation between diverse peoples working toward common goals. When the Void Harbingers arrived, they would face not a collection of fractured empires fighting for individual survival, but a united galaxy that had learned the greatest lesson humanity had to offer, that diversity was strength, cooperation was survival, and hope was the most powerful force in the universe. The transformation was complete. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had taught it how to save itself.